Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Morris, and I am here to talk to you about our wonderful Hightower Trail Huskies. You all know that a couple years ago we were Cobb County granted a STEM certified school within the district, but with our main goal to be advanced ed certified. And this past spring, we accomplished that through a lot of hard work and a bunch of years documenting and really kind of just putting together what we all do in our classroom anyways, but kind of sharing with the outside world how well we are of a school and how awesome our students are. So we're going to look at where do we go next? So we accomplished this huge awesome thing. This was our goal for the past 3 years. We're advanced ed certified. So what are we going to do? Where can we get better? So we're going to kind of look at the basic data of our school and kind of find areas that we can improve. This presentation is for all HTMS educators with a focus in science. I'm going to bring awareness to our school based on data of teachers, employees, and staff, display school strengths and areas of improvement based on gender gaps in science, EOC milestones, and increase awareness of EOC milestone scores between genders and content-specific science. So we're going to focus more on this area right here. In this area, science is a strong focus at HTMS, and so is math. Our science focus is kind of based, if you see where we stand in Cobb County and Georgia, we're going to focus more on the distinguished learners and the proficient learners, because that is where a majority of our students at our school, and our gap is between our distinguished and our proficient learners. So further on in the presentation, you'll kind of see where we are going to dive in to see the differences between these. But where we stand in our county, we are a very high achieving school. We have very many students that are in the distinguished compared to our county and our state, and same with the proficient, but there's always areas for improvement. So we're going to focus in that science EOC milestone area. We all know HTMS is a great place, but did you know at HTMS our CCRPI score has raised over the past 3 years to over 100.5? You can see above in this chart that based on Cobb County, Georgia, and Hightower, where we stand over the past 3 years, this is a pretty huge accomplishment. 100's awesome, and we are at 100.5. Is a pretty great deal. Did you know also that our focus on STEM demonstrates our continued commitment to learning through engagement, performance, and application? Those of you new to Hightower are not all aware of our vision. Hightower's vision is learning through engagement, performance, and application. So focusing our STEM based on this is kind of bringing our school together as a whole. Did you know HTMS overall performance is higher than 99% of schools in the state and is higher than its district? Also, did you know our school's academic growth is higher than 99% of schools in the state and higher than its district? HTMS is higher in overall performance and students' academic growth higher than 99% of the schools in the state and higher than our district. It's a pretty impressive feat. So here's kind of a breakdown of the teachers and the personnel and the administration at our school, just so we have an understanding of where our educators are coming from. So if you look at the chart over here on this side, this is 2016-17, 2015-16, and 2014-15. So we're breaking it down into all the teachers in the school. So we've been very consistent over the time, almost very much the same, with broken down into bachelor's degrees in the red, master's in the yellow, orange, sorry, and specialists in the yellow. And then we've got a few people that have their doctors. So if you look in 2014, we had about 25 that have their bachelor's, 27 in 2015-16, and 28 in 2016-17. That's what all of us going to 4 years of college has done. which the thing that's kind of seen over time, if you look from 3 years ago and now to where we just were. Our bachelor's has gone up, awesome. That means there's more younger people, and our master's has gone up. But why has our specialist amount of teachers in our school, our specialists, gone down? So that's kind of what we're looking at. When you look at this based to the next slide I'm going to show you, you'll understand. So our specialist has gone down, but our master's and our bachelor's has gone up. So if you look at this next slide, this is broken down into our years of experience. So a lot of times, all the teachers in our school, all the educators in our school, administration, personnel, their education a lot of times goes hand in hand with the year's experience. So here's our graph right here. And these are our people broken down into 2016, 15, and 14. So our years experience, so our specialist is going down, but also our years of experience is going up. So when all these teachers are retiring with so many years experience, that means we've got to hire new teachers. So our bachelor's is going up, and then our old teachers, so our specialist is going down. So it's not something to worry about. We have teachers kind of right in the middle with the masters. We are all extremely experienced. So we are talented educators, a talented school that we need to use to the best of our ability to increase student learning. This is kind of the percentage of enrollment of HTMS based on race. Obviously 2014 on the left, 2015 on the right, and 2016 on the bottom. This is very stagnant over the past 3 years. All this broken down is, as you can see, the enrollment is really not that much different across from 78% of whites to 76% of whites to 75%. Very much stagnant. So the demographics of our school based on race really hasn't changed over the past 3 years. The majority of our students are white, and about 25% each year the past 3 years being Asian, Black, and Hispanic or multiracial. We can all agree we teach at a very high achieving school. We have received many accolades, most recently our advanced ed certification, and take great pride in that STEM program that we offer. Advanced ed certification has been a goal of ours, and we have accomplished that goal. So kind of where do we go? Where can we improve? So each and every one of you could come up with at least 2 areas that you believe we could improve to increase student achievement in your classroom or as a whole. This is where we need your help. When everyone thinks the same, nobody is thinking. We are all experts in our content area, but our classrooms are all run in totally different ways. You come into my classroom and there's a lot of noise, hands-on moving, but you go into a classroom that is not in the gym and they might be reading or have group work. You might have people acting out stuff. So everyone does their content in different ways. And even some of you guys in the same content area do it in different ways. So if everyone's thinking the same, then no one's really thinking. If we were all teaching our students to think the same way, would we be able to increase student achievement? The next 2 slides are full of data, but we will start by looking at this past school year. We are going to focus on the science and math aspect of end of course scores of our students, but first we need to kind of look at the big picture. If you're not familiar with EOCs, tests are graded kind of on a level of beginning learners to the highest level, which is distinguished learners. At Hightower Trail, as you can see, most of our students fall into the proficient learner category, which is kind of right here. And that's about, if you looked at here's our English, our math, our science, and our social studies. So if you look at it, it's almost pretty evenly based that most of our students, percentage-wise, fall into this proficient learner area. This is great, but there's always room for improvement. So we're kind of going to focus on the difference between proficient and distinguished and kind of where is that gap and how we can improve. I know this slide is full of a ton of information. I'm going to explain it and lay it out and then give you a minute to kind of look at it and look for some areas of strengths and weaknesses. So if we broke down this chart into all these pie graphs into like a big chart, you would break down this one line right here that I'm drawing down here. Sorry, I'm trying to draw it straight. So to the left of this line, you'll see this is all the beginning learners right here. And then we've got our developing learners, our proficient learners, and then right here are distinguished learners. So it's kind of broken down into 4 columns, and then we see it's broken down by year. So you would go across this way, horizontal across here. So then we'd have 2014-15, 2015-16, and below 2014-15. So it's broken down into beginning, developing, proficient, and distinguished. These are kind of how our grades are, well, they are how our grades are sent back for end of course milestone testing. We are focusing on the math and science aspect because we are a STEM school and we do emphasize a lot of that in every course that we take. So we're going to look at our math and science scores. We've broken it down into gender. So we got beginning learners and broken down into gender. We've got developing learners broken down into gender, math and science, proficient learners broken down into math and science, gender, and then distinguished learners, math and science. We've got a little legend right here if you look down right there, and it kind of tells you the red is male math, the orange is male science, the yellow is female math, and the green is female science. So I'm going to give you a second to kind of break it down, absorb it, look for strengths and weaknesses in this, in the pie graphs by year, but also by beginning, developing, proficient, and distinguished learners. It is very obvious that this data is based on math and science and broken down into males and females. If you just look at the pie graphs and ignore everything else, a lot of them from year to year look very similar. We're going to focus on bridging the gap between the male and the female and the distinguished and the proficient. So distinguished and proficient and males and females. So we're going to bridge that gap and kind of see why there is such a gap between. So the green right here is the female science, and then we've got female science over this is female science and female science. If you look from 2016 to 15 to 14, 3 years ago, our female distinguished science scores were way higher than they were this past year. So why is that different? But when we look at our distinguished male science scores, we got 31% in 14, 27, still higher than the female, but then we are at 14, still higher than the female. So why is that changing? And it's exactly the same when it comes to math scores. So, but we're going to look at that focusing on the science, but the math, if you can see, are male and female, very close, very close. Male and female, pretty close, pretty close. And then we've got male and female, that is so close too. So why is the gap between our males and females in the science areas decreasing? Female distinguished learners is decreasing as the males is decreasing, but the gap is huge. So the gap is bigger and bigger. When you look at the proficient learners, we are so consistent from year to year. From 2014 14 to 15 to 16. The science scores between males and females are very much the same. So where is that gap from female proficient learners to female distinguished learners? That's where we need your help. I've decided to take this data and break it down a little bit more and show you a specific example based on science, physical science. The EOC in physical science, and broke it down into scores. Why is there a higher proficient learner percentage in females, and it is flipped when you look at distinguished learners? Males are higher in the distinguished learners. Could it be less STEM-related activities with female focus? Science and math is more male-dominated. Why is this? Do middle school age females do more math things, more science things? Is it a more male-dominated area? I want you to talk with your group right here and come up with a few reasons why this could be a factor. That our female proficient percentages are higher than males. And then when we get to distinguished learners, why are the male scores higher than the female? So if you would just take a couple minutes and talk with your table, make a list, and then we'll kind of put it all together. Why are these science scores changing between proficient and distinguished learners and gender-based? Okay, so you came up with these great ideas. We're going to look back at, we've got 2014, 15 right here. We've got 2015, 16, and 16, 17 again. Based on physical science EOCs, if you're looking at, here's our distinguished learners, higher female, lower female. Higher female, lower female. Higher female, lower female. Why? So looking at all these ideas that you guys have came up with, we need to take all this data and kind of break it down and kind of see where we can focus. There's so many other science classes, but this is just a little picture into HTMS and kind of just showing you the numbers and percentages specifically. So I love all your why answers to my questions, but where's the gap and what's data have to say on female proficient and female distinguished, and why we've got so many more science related EOC scores? Females are proficient, but then when we get to the distinguished side, our males are higher in the distinguished category in our science, more STEM related EOCs milestones. So I kind of think about this quote: we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So if we look back on our teachings and the increased learning in our classroom, sometimes we need to change our teaching to make the changes, for our clientele and kind of the society, how our students change year to year. By looking at the data of our school science and math assessments, we need to find a way to decrease the gap between the males and the females. Not from the beginning learners, because we don't have many of those, but between our proficient learners, which are awesome, to our distinguished learners. We cannot change it with the same thinking that we have been doing. So if you look at this, same old thinking, same old results is just a very cyclical and keeps on going and going. We have great results, but we want better results. Let's use this data to help to implement HTMS's vision of learning through engagement, performance, and application, so we can increase the amount of distinguished learners at HTMS by bridging the gap between the scores of males and females. We want to see success across the board, but as male scores have increased over the past 3 years, females have gone down. Let's change our great school to be the best school in the state of Georgia. So we've gone over a ton of information, different statistics, numbers, test scores, but the real thing is, how can we increase the learning of our students but also take our proficient students, which are great, and change them to distinguished. Our distinguished students are more males than females on our science EOCs. So where's that gap, and what can we do? So what we need to think about as a team is decide how to collect and use the data for monitoring. What consistent things are we going to use across the board? So we need to come to consensus. What is the difference between a distinguished and a proficient? How are we going to be able to tell that what we're doing in our classroom are preparing our students to be distinguished learners on their science EOCs and proficient learners? So we might have to look at the test more specifically broken down into questions, or what areas that our females are struggling more with than our males. So it might be looking at more data. And another thing to think about is we need to think about developing an action plan to address the weaknesses between the genders and on the science EOCs, and that might be looking at more data, but we're going to work together as a team and come up with some better ways to collect data to increase the improvement of our female students on EOCs, increase the distinguished females, but also while we're increasing the male distinguished. So hopefully we're bridging that gap and raising all our proficient students to distinguished and all our beginning learners to proficient, and keep on improving the cycle that we have instilled in all our students at Hightower. Thanks so much for your time. You can email me anytime you want if you need help getting data, if you would like data from the school, or if you need help implementing data in our classroom or finding assessments and that kind of stuff. We will meet back with more ideas and to discuss how we are going to go forth in the future. And you guys are going to be a great part of developing an awesome data team to increase our proficient learners to distinguished learners with females. We're going to bridge that gap.